Hey everybody, how you all doing? It's been a while since I've popped a video up on this channel, and apologies actually, I haven't had any real time to make any new content in relation to this channel, and it's been a while since I've really delved into this work. The past couple years have been taking me in different directions, but I've always kept my ear to the ground, I guess, is a good way of sort of saying, like, I haven't forgotten about this work, and I've been getting a few comments and messages from some of you who've been watching my old videos. So I thought I'd take the time to just pop out a new video saying, no, this channel isn't dead in the water, so to speak. I will be putting some new content up. It's just it's taken me a little bit of a, I guess, life path journey to understand the work that I'm actually delving into a little better, and why I'm even looking at it in the first place. See, when I first started looking into all of this work, whether it was the Fibonacci sequences, the shapes, the sacred geometry, it all started for me a long time ago when I was at university and I was studying for my acupuncture degree. And through that acupuncture degree, I was trying to delve into a form of study coined esoteric acupuncture at the time, which studied a little more about how the different systems and philosophies of sacred geometry, for example, with Hindu chakra systems, coincided and worked together with acupuncture and Chinese medicine philosophy, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. I can't even talk about it in one video, but what drew me to it was, on the cover of that book when I first saw it, was the star tetrahedron. I've actually got one sitting here, this shape here. And I'd been playing with sacred geometry, drawing shapes, the flower of life, gaining an understanding of this, delving into my own spirituality, understanding that, and then just the rabbit hole continues to expand and expand. And so that then led me down one path, another path, and eventually I found myself delving into so many different things that it was all getting really exciting and really full on. Then 2022 and 2023 hit, and it was just ridiculous. 2022, I think, was the last few videos that I was working on, and then 2023 is when I really had to stop any sort of development up until now, which was where I'm recording this. We're at the end of 2024. We're almost at New Year's Eve, and it's December 27th right now when I'm recording this, and a lot has happened. A lot of development in myself, as well as my understanding of this, has sort of taken a high rise, a low rise, and a little bit in between. And that's because every time I delve into any of these topics, and I know the most recent comments that I've been getting is about, and I've got it here, I'm going to pop it up on the, hold on, I'm going to lift this one up, was in relation to my infinity wheels. And this is something that I created a while ago. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and each one of these sort of moves, and I placed a little plate. My partner has a laser cutter, so that just helps me substantially put a little six-pointed star to try to understand these a little better. And I even created the other wheels, and so my intention was to put this on like a little thing and play with the numbers and work out little sequences. So this work has sort of continued, but the reason why it even developed to this level was because, I guess, of a question I was trying to answer and where I was guided to look. And it's one of those things where once you have that understanding, you don't need to delve any further into it, but then you might come back to it a little later. So just like the wheel of time, just like a circle in general, we come around that wheel and we come back to it. And I'm finding myself, just before I started getting those text messages from the people like yourselves watching this video, I started looking back at that work, and I was like, this is more relevant now to me. And why is it more relevant? What am I needing to understand about it? So I thought I'd pop a little video for you guys here and just sort of talk about it a little bit more, just from a base detail. Nothing too out of the blue, just going through it and just giving you a general, I guess, discourse on where it's transpired, where it's unfolded, and how it's sort of developed from here. So let's start from the beginning. When I first started looking into the Fibonacci sequence, I was trying to understand why those numbers were even a thing in the first place. And at the time, I was also looking into a lot of different philosophies and understanding of Nikola Tesla, but trying not to get into the swept up conundrum of thought that is out there in the internet world, where it's all about the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And yes, those numbers are very, very specific and very, very relevant in many different things, but they're not the only numbers in the world, and they are very unique, and with an understanding that they are unique, you can unlock the keys to the universe. And I say this with a bit of an eye roll, because it's been a bit of a, as I said, a journey where a lot of the internet, a lot of the world, it's like we're pre-programmed to get triggered in certain ways by certain key phrases, and the Nikola Tesla 369 pops up a lot, and it is for good reason, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it is completely misrepresented and misunderstood in its own way, because the numbers 3, 6, and 9 for me are in a way gateway numbers. They're not hidden per se, but they're like in between numbers, and the reason why I say this is because of what I sort of see when I look at this work. And so when you look at the Fibonacci sequence, the numbers, simply put, they start with 1, and then you add the number previous, and then that creates the cycle moving forward. Now, realistically speaking, the Fibonacci sequence is just one series of numbers that starts with the numbers 1, 1. And as I mentioned in that Infinity Series video, there are more than just one series of numbers. So, for example here, all of the Fibonacci numbers can actually be planted out in this clock. The first ring, and sorry, I'm just going to take this off, hopefully it doesn't fall apart. So the first ring is this one here, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and obviously these are all compressed. But then the second ring is also 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, if you've noticed. And then the third ring, you can see I've highlighted the number 2 there, because it starts with 2, and then 2, 1, 3, 4, 7, and so on. This is the Lucas numbers. Now, they follow the same symbol and pattern, not symbol, but they follow the same patterning of Fibonacci sequence. You add the previous number, and then the sequence continues. So when you start with the numbers 1 and 1, and quite frankly, when you start with any of the 2 numbers inside the Fibonacci sequence, when it's compressed into number compression, digital root, mod 9, whatever you want to call it, you can create the Fibonacci sequence in repetition. It just continues. However, obviously, the numbers that you start with, and there are a certain amount of them, and can't remember them off the top of my head, how many there are seed numbers in the original 1, 1 sequence. But there are a certain amount of seed numbers that can create, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to answer this right now. Hold that thought, 1 second. And you see, while I'm getting this out, there's a reason why, and this is exactly what I mean by how I get to this information. I have a question, and I try to find an answer to that question, and when I can't find an answer out there in the mainstream world, or even in the esoteric world, anybody really, I'm looking for answers, and then I start to listen to my inner guidance and listen to that sort of pull of where I need to be placed, where I need to be listening, where I need to be learning from, and I eventually find an answer. Whether it's the correct answer or not, it eventually leads me to the correct answer, but sometimes I can get thrown with a spanner in the works, if you would get what I mean. So here it is. This is actually the work that I did to try and find every single seed, and this is actually if you've watched a few of my other previous videos, you'll see I mentioned a man named Robert Edward Grant, and that's because I started looking into his work, because he was delving into the same stuff I was, just at a completely different level. and I was intrigued by it. And so then I ended up going to Egypt and meeting Robert in his Egypt tour and going to visit all the pyramids and so on. And he's a remarkable man, and he has a lot of information, and it was a completely different perspective it gave me. But funny enough, he wrote a book, and I believe it's here. We're citing. So he wrote this book here, Philomath, and it's funny enough because I hadn't received the book yet, and I was looking into this stuff, and I'd only just touched on some of his work, just based on the little YouTube and TikTok videos, not TikTok, I think it was Instagram at the time, that he'd posted. But for me, I was trying to find answers to the Fibonacci sequence, and that's what led me to his and many others' works. And so I drew this out, and what this is quite literally every single number sequence. So if you have a look here, and I'm just going to pop my head up the top here, you can see we got 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 5, and we just keep going around, and then we go through and through. And so this is every single number in order, just shifted. And so what I did with this sort of shift method, I found every paired number that creates a Fibonacci sequence. I found every paired number that creates a Lucas sequence, and then what is called Fibonacci, which starts with 314, as well as the 369 seed, and the 9, which I call the void, because the 9-9 sequence always repeats itself, and that's when you get into mod 9. Now, this is all mod 9, okay, so modulus 9, the universe of 9, and the reason why I find this very significant is because of the, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Hebrew numbers, the Jewish numbers, they were created, the first 9, the 9 numbers were created with the first letters of the alphabet, I believe, or something like this. So the number 9 is very significant to me in that way. Like these little seeds of information that I get, it's like, okay, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. And it just plays in the back of my head. And then I delve into it a little more later. So there are exactly, and I quote, 24 seed numbers in the Fibonacci. There's 24 in the Lucas, there's 24 in the Fibonacci, and this is the interesting one. There are 8 369 seeds, okay? And there is 199 void. So what does that mean? Well, if you remember the picture, and hold that thought, I've got it again. And here we are. This is my folder, and it has become a folder. And here it is here. If you remember that series of numbers right there, this series of numbers, it is 8 spheres surrounding 1. So there are 8 spheres of numbers surrounding 1 sphere. And so there's 8 369 numbers surrounding 1 9 sphere, and that is the literal 9 sphere. So when we look at this patterning sequence, we have, and this is just Infinity Series 1, if you remember the work. So I created, if you remember, that number sequence, this first one. This is the Infinity Series 1, this guy here. And so it's Fibonacci, 369, and the Lucas numbers, and then the 9 void at the end. So the center and the end would be the 9. And there are 8 unique sequences within that sequence. So there is a unique sequence with the number 1 1 seed, and then there's a unique sequence with the number 8 8 seed, if that makes sense. And so when you run through these sequences, because what I did, and I'll show you this, is I started this sequence off, and then I wanted to know why the Lucas numbers had a double 2 and a double 7 in there when you went down to modulus 9. And then I noticed the Fibonacci had the double 4 and 5. And this is what I mean by why I was bringing up Robert Grant earlier, because this was the question I was asking myself. is why does this happen and what's going on here. And when you read his book, there's a certain chapter. So I had just received his book and I was delving into this and I was making the sequence out, and I was doing the raw math. And by raw math, I'm not even kidding you. I mean raw math. I think I've got it here. I was going through and I was counting the numbers out one by one, and there they are, and then compressing them to make that grid, starting with double one, double two, double three, and I'd just finished it. And then I went to the next page in his book because I just started reading it, and lo and behold, because I couldn't find that, I didn't understand that there was a seed missing until I finished that grid, finished this grid, found the 336 code, which gave me my double three seed numbers, because I was trying to find out, like, where's the double three, where's the double six, and where's the double nine, because I had the 4 and the 5s, they were in the Fibonacci. I had the double 2 and 7, they were in the Lucas, and the double 1 and double 8, they were in the Fibonacci. But the other 3 were non-existent. So I was trying to figure out where they were, and then I flick over one page, because I hadn't read this chapter yet, and it hit the next chapter, and what do I see? But I see Robert's already figured it out. And so I was like, well, I could have just read one page over, but here's the thing. And if you've seen one of my other videos, you notice I talk about guides a lot and where I'm guided to. I have a deep connection with God and my spirit team, my guides. They guide me where I need to be, what I need to do, and how I need to do it. And I wasn't able to read that passage yet. Every time I went to go pick up the book, something distracted me. I'm like, nope, can't read it yet. No, I'll read it later. Or something, I'd get a phone call, and I had to figure this out myself, because I had to figure it out myself in order to delve into something that I then needed later. If I had just read his page, then I'd be like, oh, it's 336, and I wouldn't have figured out the seed numbers. I wouldn't have figured out that there were 8 specific spheres. So here's the thing now. When you figure out the infinity series, and when you sort of go through it, you have to understand that Fibonacci sequence is just one sphere in that 8. So coming around to the sequence, that one sphere is just that top left corner, so to speak. And then there are 7 other spheres that follow a different thinking process. But when you compress them down to 9, they mirror each other. And this is when we get into the Vedic square. And again, I had to create the Vedic square. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain in a second. But I had to create the Vedic square from scratch, and not knowing what it was until I created it. And then once I created it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why does that seem familiar? Why do these numbers seem familiar? And then I remembered something that I was watching from a Jane 108 video. And if you don't know who Jane 108 is, go check out his content. He's phenomenal. I've been following him for a little while now. And prior and during this work, back in 2022, 2021, I was learning about all of this stuff, not just from Robert, not just from him, but a bunch of different people, and putting it all together myself at the same time. And so I remember he mentioned the numerical sequence from the Vedic square, from the numbers 4 and 5, follow some sort of atomic alignment to platinum crystals. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to retract my thoughts. I'm going back 2-3 years from memory here. But anyway, so as I mentioned, those seed numbers, when we come back, we see that the numbers 3, 6, and 9, when even in the Fibonacci sequence, even we have 8. We have 8 specific seed numbers. And so they're literally 3, 6, 6, 9, 3, 3, 6, 6, 9, 9, 6, 3, 9, 6, 3, in that order all the way through, or however you want to look at it. Those 8 seeds create the 336 code, which is the 369 code, so to speak. The 99 code is completely just 99. It's 9 plus 9. It is itself, and then plus itself equals itself. So 9 is the center. It's the void. It is the outer cap of the firmament and the inner core of universe. That's how I see it. The 1-1 sequences and the Fibonacci sphere, and I'd call it the Fibonacci sphere because that's where all of these numbers come. This sphere itself is the Fibonacci sphere, or the Infinity Series 1. It carries the Lucas numbers, it carries Fibonacci, it carries all of them. And it's like those 336 is the gateways between, because each sphere, each connection connects itself to another one of those number sequences in some way, shape, or form. And when you line the numbers up on this dial, and I'm just going to do it for you in a second, some interesting things tend to sort of happen. Like you start to create very specific number patterns, and I have not figured out every number pattern. In fact, it's like a combination in its own way. It's like a cipher, if you will, and it's interesting to sort of see these things because that's the way I perceive the world around us. It's one big puzzle, and the more I play with this puzzle, the more of it I unlock, the more I understand it, and that's what it is to me. This is a game. This is part of like the life. And so when we line these numbers up, so there's the double 1 in Fibonacci, there's the double 2, the double 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, all the way up, right? And then when we look at these numbers, we see like there's the 9s all lined up perfectly. And then we've got this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What's happening here is we've created the Vedic square within the sphere. The Vedic square is completely within this section. So then you might be thinking, okay, what's with the 8, right? Well, if you remember, there are 8 unique spheres, and they're paired, okay? So we have the sphere 1, which starts with the number 1, and then multiplying it by itself, the number 1. So 1 times 1 equals 1, and then you add the previous number. So you multiply by 1 at the previous number, which you can redundantly just X out the multiplication. Now, when I started looking into the next sequence, I'm like, okay, these all correlate to the golden ratio. So the first sphere correlates to the golden ratio, the golden mean. What is it? 3.1415. That's pi. Sorry, 1.618 is the golden ratio, and so it gets closer and closer and closer to the golden ratio when you take the first number and divide it by the previous number. As we get exponentially further out into the series, into the sequences, no matter which one of those seeds you use, it will be close to, or getting close to, the golden ratio, the golden constant, phi. And then you have the silver ratio, which I didn't even know existed until I started asking the question. So then I went to the next question in my mind was, okay, well, if Fibonacci is 1 plus 1, what are other sequences? And then this is where you had the Pell sequence, I think it was. The Pell sequence is you multiply it by 2, and then you add the previous number. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. How about I do a Fibonacci type system of that, and then start with those seed numbers. So I used the exact same sequencing, the seed numbers, to see how many different seeds there were in the Pell sequence. And I did that work, and then that created that sphere. And so this is the sphere of 2 and 7, because as you remember, if you watch that previous videos, when you get to the 8th sphere, it is the exact reverse of the first sphere. So the numbers of Fibonacci, when you go forward, it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. And then when you get to the 8th sphere, the 8th infinity series, it is the exact reverse of Fibonacci. So it starts at 1, 1 goes backwards, if that makes sense. And that's phenomenal. In my mind, I'm like, that's me mind blown, like, oh wow. But then when you understand the Vedic square is modulus 9. And it's just this tiny little square of literally mod 9ing the entire mathematical timetable. So 1 times table 2, 3, all the way to 9. And it creates this little beautiful square. So what we've done here is we've Vedic squared the entire Fibonacci-esque family, if you will, because Fibonacci is just 1, 1, 2, 3. and then everybody else has coined a bunch of different ones. But even Fibonacci doesn't derive from Fibonacci. Fibonacci, if I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me on this exactly, but if I remember correctly, there have been and there are notes that Fibonacci's sequence was found in many different cultures before Fibonacci coined the Fibonacci sequence. It was found in Indian texts. It was found I remember. Anyway, the point is that Fibonacci wasn't the first person, but he's the most common person we know of who talked about this series first, because we didn't have maybe written word back then. We probably did, but it's like the sacking of Alexandria. We lost a lot of information, and then there was a bunch of book burnings in our history. So stupid people doing stupid things, and then we get thrown backwards in time, right? So anyway, the same thing with this series. So we have 2 and 7, and we have the 4 and 5 series. So where we went here is we took the same knowledge and understanding of the Pell series of multiply it by 2. So take every seed number, multiply it by 2, then plus the previous one. What does that make? Then compress it to 9. Well, then you create series 2, infinity series. Then do the same thing with multiplication of 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and all the way up to 9. And when you do 9, that's the center of the whole thing. So we have then 8 unique spheres that are unique. They have a pair. This is important. They have a paired number and a paired sphere representing that number as well. So for example, the second sphere is completely paired to the 7th sphere, because the 7th sphere, 7 multiplied by whatever plus the previous number, or multiplied by 7 plus the previous number, that series, and then the 2 multiplication. Those are completely reverse of each other. They are mirror images of each other. So we have this mirror, right? And again, this is where like my mind is blowing in so many different ways, because here I am looking at these numbers and the way that they're reversing on each other. And you can see it in the Vedic square. It's pretty simple, because you just, like, by the way, that's the Vedic square right there. And so it's the number sequence 1 multiplied by 1 equals 1, 1 multiplied by 2 equals 2, and so on. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 is when we compress it, because it's 10, 12, 1 and 3, and so on. And then the 3 times table, is 3, 6, 9 repeating. The 4 times table is 4, 8, 3, 2, 7, 6, 1, 5, 9. And then the 5 times table, watch carefully, is 5, 1, 6, 2. There it is there, 5, 1, 6, 2 in reverse. I love this. I love this stuff. This mind boggles me, and I have to ask more questions, right? So now we get into, okay, what does this all mean? Why 8? Okay, why are there 8 seeds of 369 code? Why are there 24 seeds of everything else? And why is there only 1 seed of 9? Well, that's the way the Vedic square works, right? So then we're like, okay, but why are they paired? Well, Robert Grant actually, and I'm just going to pause to find this. So I found the page, and I'm going to read this for you in a second. But I want you to understand that as I'm working this out, as I've created my entire series, and then I start reading all of these different chapters, and I see that other people are working on this, but from different lenses. They're seeing the same information, but then they're only getting what they need to answer their questions and then moving on. So I see this as like, again, one massive puzzle piece, and we're all working on this magnum opus, and we're adding to it and adding to it. And one way or another, we're unraveling the mysteries of the universe in its own way. Like these numbers, they don't just show up. So let me read this phrase, this text here, and then you'll understand what I mean. Why my mind went blown. Okay, the original idea behind this table comes from the Vedic square table's shapes. Okay. Explained earlier in the chapter 2, where we showed how the shapes correspond to numbers, adding 9 to wear mirror images of each other. Number 9 will occupy the position of a photon, or in broader terms, energy. As photons are believed to be their own mirror images, just like the shapes formed by number 9 on the Vedic square corresponded to a square, or a bell, which is its own mirror image. Similarly, each particle is believed to have its own mirror image, like the electrons and positrons, protons and antiprotons, etc. Moreover, when a particle and an antiparticle are combined, they create a burst of pure energy, number 9 in brackets, just like 1 plus 8, 2 plus 7, 6, 3 and 6, and 4 and 5 do. You get it? Like, did your mind get blown? Mine fucking did. So, assigning the numbers from 1 to 8 for the subatomic particles and antiparticles, number 9 will take the place of photons or energy. And then he has the energy photon particles right there. And NO equaling 1, and then the antiparticle, and then he talks about the natural decay of from a photon, I think it was like a photon, electron, neutron. Here, we can check the above table looking at some fundamental reactions of the subatomic world, the beta decay and the beta positive decay. This is out of my context, out of my scope here. And the electron capture, K capture, and see whether the above numbers satisfy these reactions or not. As explained above, the beta negative decay is the spontaneous decay of a neutron into the 3 subatomic particles, the proton, the electron, and the antineutrino, which is responsible for the radioactive behavior of some elements. It goes as follows. I think that's neutron goes to proton plus an electron plus a V. I don't know what V is, but just reading that there. So now we're talking into physics, and again, I don't know enough about physics, but I know that Robert has worked closely with people such as Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist, and his work on particle physics, not particle physics, sorry, his work in general is very interesting in its own way, and this is the stuff that sort of goes over my head right now because I'm not that well versed in it, but I'm learning. So where am I going with all of this? Well, when we look at these spheres, they're just numbers on a circle, realistically speaking. That's what they are, right? But when we start to understand what these numbers can mean, so for example, in this context, we're talking about the decay of particles and the relationship of those particles with a corresponding number corresponding exactly to the 1 and 8 equals 9, 2 and 7 equals 9, creating bursts of energy, and so on. Now, this is where I then continue out, right? So I thought, okay, if that's the case, and we're talking, before I read these chapters now, we're going back in time, and I'm looking at these number sequences, and I'm like, okay, well, there's a relationship between the 4 and the 5 equaling the 9. The 9 seems to stand alone. The 3 and 6 obviously equal 9, and this is the Nikola Tesla area, so to speak, here. The 2 and 7 equal 9. The 1 and 8 equal 9. We have these 8 spheres corresponding to pairs of a coin. So we have 4 actual spheres. So 4 on one side, 4 on the other, and then 1 combining them in the middle, and they're all paired with each other. So 4 and 4 equals 8 and 1 central core, right? Where do we get that? Well, we get that right here in the star tetrahedron. And then I'm like, holy shit, let's keep going, right? Now, the star tetrahedron has exactly 8 sides. It is a tetrahedron which has 4 corners, and it is a very balanced shape, and we have the masculine pointing up and the feminine pointing down. Now, we're not talking about male and female bodies, we're talking about energy, positive and negative, the positive and then the negative, positive flowing up, negative flowing down, the yin going up, the fire going up, the yang, the water suppressing and coming down, and the 2 polar opposites coming together. And in the center, the very center, is the singularity. It is the spark of creation, the thing that holds everything together. So each side, as above, so below, if you want to coin it that way, the 1, the 8, the 2, the 7, the 3, the 6, the 4, the 5, or 1, 3, and 6, 3, 6, 9 down the center. However you want to place this. Now we're getting into the flower of life. Now we're getting into the cube. Because when we shape this, you can see it turns into the cube, but it's not. It's just 4 sides on one end and a mirror image opposite on the other side. So we have number sequences connecting to number sequences, connecting to pathways, representations of the number 8, the polar pairs, the pairs between yin and yang. And then we think, okay, well, what has pairs in 8s? Well, the Bagua, the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, and this is going into the Taoist philosophies, if it even comes from there. I'm still learning so much about this. So then I went into a deep dive on that, and that led me to trying to understand the 8 elements and 8 primordial energies. And then how do these numbers connect to those primordial energies? What am I even getting to at this point? Do you understand where my brain is blowing up and how many different ways? But this is how my path has taken me. And so then I get these questions from people. It's like, okay, well, what does this mean? I'm like, well, I don't know yet, because I'm looking at it from my perspective. And this is the beauty of, I guess, sharing work like this. I see these sequences of numbers in a very specific way, but others will take this, just like Robert, for example, and then take a particle physics mind and add the beta decay of protons to electrons to neutrons and so on. And it's like, you can see it in that. So then we can then look at these things in so many different ways. And then it always brings me back to something that was labeled for me at the time, this might be wrong, but it was called the concordances of the elements in Chinese medicine, where we had the 5-element theory and all of the different elements and how they connected to the different pathways and the meridians of the body, how those things connected to different colors, different cells, different smells, different vibrations, sound, and it just expanded. And then that got me thinking, well, that's very similar to Ibrahim Karim's work in relation to how he looks at the different resonances and frequencies of things and how they correspond with each other. And I remember a passage that he was dowsing different temples in and different places, and he found that there was a resonating frequency of those temples, and each temple was created with that same resonating frequency and was able to build on itself. So in other words, the temple of Shiva had a very specific resonating frequency. The temple of Zeus in every place that he visited had a resonating frequency. And it's like, whoa, wow, like that means that like they've dialed in to the numerical value, the frequency, the connecting force that is that being, and they're able to bring that into a place. And it's like when we say, oh, we have the presence of God in church. Well, if that's the case, were all those churches that we go into, are they built to that mathematical vibration to bring the presence of God to those places? Or are you just anointing that this is the place of God because it is so? And how does that become so? And it just gives you a different perspective of what our ancestors and what these ancient cultures tapped into, because they understood, as I said, the Fibonacci sequences were not just something that we learnt from Fibonacci. He learned them from somewhere else, and they have roots in India as well as God knows how many other places around the world. So how much of this information have we lost over time, and how interconnected is it? And are we then unraveling this all again in order to understand creation better, to become more connected to ourselves, to God, to all of the cosmic beings of the universe? Where does that lead us? Where does that take us from there? And these are the questions I ask. And this is why I find these answers, because I'm searching for answers to these questions. And then my guides are guiding me exactly where I need to go in order to answer these questions, in order to answer them for myself. And then some I can't share yet because I don't A, know enough about them to share them, and B, some information, and I have been warned by friends and my own guides, keep this to yourself until the right time. And I can't help but wonder if other thinkers in the past have also had these sort of conundrums where they weren't able to release certain information because of the ramifications it could have if put into the wrong hands. And then you're probably thinking like, oh well, that took a turn, like where did this video go to? But these are the thought processes that come through my mind. These sequences of numbers, right? Let's say that there's a way of utilizing these numbers in some nefarious way. You're opening up a portal to a dimension that then brings a horde of aliens into our existence, and all of a sudden now we've got fucking World War 74. Like, don't know why 74, but it is what it is. You get what I mean? Like, it clearly it's not going to happen like that, but there are so many different things that can happen when you're opening up realms of information. And when you understand, like, look at the splitting of the atom. That was one of the greatest finds. Nuclear power was one of the greatest discoveries of our time, and we used it to create a fucking bomb and blew up half our planet almost. Like, obviously not, but you get what I mean. We are dangerous with knowledge. The human race does not. We're an infant. We're an infant playing with a fucking gun that can probably blow up half the universe if we were allowed to even touch it, let alone understand it. And yet, what we probably should be doing with it is not what we end up doing with it. So you can understand my caution to some of these things, like, okay, how far am I delving into this, and should I even know some of this information? Sometimes it's like, do I just leave well enough alone? These thoughts have passed through my mind more times than I can count. But these are not the reasons why I've stopped actually recording these videos. As I said, quite frankly, the past couple of years have just been very busy in more ways than I can count, to be honest. But in good and bad, and it's time for, not a video for this channel, I guess, but the overall is that my life took a small turn in a different direction to allow me to understand a part of life that I needed more time to develop in. And now that I have more of that understanding, I have a deeper appreciation for this work, and I'm not attacking it, if you will, as viciously as I was in the past, because I have to understand balance in life, and with everything there is balance. Even in these number sequences there is balance. But I think the reason, and probably the reason why I stopped putting these videos out, was because, and I can see it now to a degree, when 2020 hit, a lot, and I mean a lot of people took to the internet, even myself, but I was already on there, just not completely in this context. And I've always wanted to make videos about this stuff, but I didn't understand or know how. And it wasn't until 2020 that I got to sit down, just like everybody in the world, right? And I got to really learn. I got to really develop this part of me. I got to really understand layers of this that I'd always known about, but never really had the time to sit down and work at. And then I thought, well, now I want to figure out how to share it. But then what else was happening around that time? 95% of the population seemed to want to create YouTube videos, or TikToks, or channels, or Discords. Everybody wanted to become an influencer, and it's still happening to this day. But I'm glad that I didn't continue down that path until now, because looking at how the world transpired over the years, we have so many influencers out there claiming that they know everything there is to know about these topics, and I've been getting quite frustrated watching the content that's been coming out there. And I follow a certain amount of people that I find intellectual and they resonate with me. But what I've been disheartened by over the years, and I'm sure many of you have probably come around the same conclusions, where you're looking for answers to something, and you're getting given these answers by certain people, and you think, finally, like, I'm learning, like, finally I can understand these. And then you start watching their content, and watching and watching, and then it's like something happens, and then you realize this person is just regurgitating somebody else's knowledge, and they know nothing, and they're just doing it for likes and views on their own channel. That's the biggest piss off point for me. Like, I no offense to those people, and if you're a channel like that, like, I mean you no offense, because you serve a purpose. You serve a purpose for people who want this information and need you to be able to regurgitate it. They need your version of this. Not every teacher is the same. You can teach the same thing 700 different ways, and there are 700 different people that will need that information in those unique ways of those 700 people that are dishing it out. Do you understand what I mean? So there are people out there that are going to resonate the way I speak it. There are people out there that are going to resonate the way that random influencer that's regurgitating somebody else's views for a completely, purely selfish, buy my book type mindset and make me a millionaire type mindset. And this has never been my intention with this work. Like, it was always question, answer, question, answer. So making these videos, I didn't feel like I wanted to, because I found myself almost delving into that stereotype of like, I need to make this video because of this context, because of this reason. And I really was struggling with myself on that, because I didn't want it for that reason. I didn't want it to be that. So now I finally feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can make these videos, and I'm happy to do so. And you can see, like, I've been talking for 46 minutes, and it's natural. It is pure information. There is nothing there's nothing to prove here. I'm just explaining my story to you, and whether you're willing to listen to it or not, if you want this information, it's here for you. And if it's not something that you're wanting, you're not going to need me to tell you. You would have stopped listening to me in the first 30 seconds, because you're in TikTok brain and you need information now, like in bite-sized pieces. But that's not how I work, and therefore people like me aren't gonna want that information this way. But you will need that other influencer that's probably gonna find this video, sit there and regurgitate parts of what I've said in here and parts of what other people have said, and make their own unique video and claim it as their own. And many people are probably gonna do that, and whatever, like, it is what it is. But this information is not mine. I don't feel like it's mine. It's been given to me, but it is not solely mine. It is, I've created it because it wasn't there when I was looking for it. And certain things that I've created, I then found out were a thing. But it's been a sense of rediscovery. And so if you want to rediscover with me, keep following me on this channel, and I'll keep posting more videos. And ask me questions, shoot me a text message, and I'll happily chit chat with you all. I'm creating a Discord channel, which God knows how to use it. We can learn together, and I'll post it up later down the track. I'll probably put it in a comment on this video or something. And we'll keep delving into what this all means and where these sort of number sequences go. But for those of you who've been asking me all these questions, I hope this gives you another layer to it. And I know that I've probably piqued your interest in what else have I uncovered, and I promise you I will share more. But trust me when I say there's too much. There is so much. There is so much here to unpack, and this infinity series that I've created is just one question in a plethora of questions and answers that I've been delving into. So what more can this sequence offer? I don't know yet, but I'm willing to look into it. And with the works of people like yourself out there who are interested in this stuff and delving into it just as much, as well as people like Robert Grant and Jane 108 who have done work prior and keep developing work, and even other people in the case of like Nassim Haramein, who are doing particle physics, I'm gonna say physics. I don't remember exactly what he does right now, but I love watching and learning and developing something amongst all of these other people, and watching what they come up with, and then adding that and adding layers to my own work, because it's a puzzle. It is an absolute puzzle, and I love it, and I love puzzles, and I love figuring things out, not just for myself, but just because I have a curious mind. So, if this is the stuff you like, and if you want to learn more with me as we delve down this journey together, hey, give me a follow, give me a like, shoot a subscribe. Again, I don't mean to build this channel up for any more than the people that want to watch and develop with me along the way. And I'll pop these videos on different places. I'll set up a TikTok. Who knows how long that's going to stay up, because apparently it's closing down in America. I don't know if that's going to be here in Australia, but we'll see what happens. And I'll pop a few little channels up, but most likely I'll have one point of communication. So if you can't reach me on one, just flick me a message on any of the other platforms and I'll find my way to you guys. It might take me a couple weeks in some cases. Don't be disheartened if it takes me a couple months to get back to you, because the nature of my work, and I mean my physical work, what puts bread and drink and food on my table, it's very time consuming for me, and it doesn't give me much time to work on this stuff, but I do tinker, and the more I get asked questions, the more I sit with myself outside delving into this rather than doom scrolling on TikTok. So please shoot me a message. It will be in the back of my head. I will not be able to forget about it. It will be something that will just drill at me until I get off my ass and I address it. So keep me in check, and I'll keep delving into this stuff, and I'll keep learning and growing with you all, and maybe you'll all find stuff that I haven't even considered, and that will throw me down another rabbit hole. Please just let me get out of the first 5. All right, we're in 5 rabbit holes already. I'll name them later for you. All right, everyone. Well, that's almost an hour of talking, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you something, and as I said before, if you like this sort of content and you want to see more, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, comment below, say something, give me a heads up. Tell me what you think about this context. If you haven't watched any of the other videos, have a look back and just watch some of the videos that I've done in the past about the Infinity series. And there are others like, for example, the Flower of Life and the Cube Octahedron, which I've got here. I had to make it. I had to make this shape. This is the Cube Octahedron. And I love it. It's awesome. And this shape unlocked things for me that I didn't even know existed. And the other reason why I like it is because it has 8 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, hold on. No, sorry, it has 6. But then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles. So we have the 8 triangles here. And this comes out of the Flower of Life, and then in a way, this also connects to these number sequences. I've had many visuals about them, but we won't get into that because that'll be another 10-hour long video. So if you've seen the videos on this, as well as the where I opened up and found the, I think it was the rhombic dodecahedron within the Flower of Life, that was a game changer for me. I was like, these are the things that develop. Like, you ask a question and it leads you to something else, and you see something and you're like, that's interesting, and then you just expand. So play with this stuff and keep learning and developing and growing and see where it takes you. Anyway, all right, that's enough. I'm rambling. Have a good week, everybody. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year for 2024, and we'll see you all bright and fresh in 2025. There's so much more coming in 2025. It's going to be crazy. Have a good one.